Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
It's our technology unit, and we're talking about undersea cables. How do we get the internet to go from any one of these continents over to Taiwan and back? Well, we depend highly on these undersea cables. We were talking about what they do and why we need them. We called them the backbone of the internet. So we really do rely on these undersea cables, and we need to keep them safe and make sure that they're protected from natural disasters or enemies or anything like that. So as we always do, Tom, are you going to read through this or am I?
I guess I'll let you do it because I did it yesterday.
Okay.
So here you go.
Okay. Rarely does the average person have the chance to glimpse the framework of the digital world. The million kilometers of cables that underpin so much of our daily lives and radiate across the globe only make it to the public's attention when something goes wrong. Ships' anchors might graze the cables, or especially in shallower waters near the coast, cables' protective coatings might scrape against rocks and become damaged. Whatever the reason, the result is a break in service. However, huge tech and telecommunications companies find it embarrassing when their services are disrupted. So they usually have backup plans. These sometimes include satellites, but more often, companies just allocate their data to as many different routes around the world as they can afford. The cables aren't fragile, though. The most compact ones, while only about as thick as a thumb, are still coated with protective metal and plastic, as well as conductive copper, close to the core of fiber optic cabling. It is along these fine glass threads that information is sent in pulsing patterns of light. Thicker cables don't necessarily contain more optical fibers. Their width is due to additional layers of protection. Still, these layers don't fully insulate the cable. So in addition to the damage sustained as a result of human carelessness or the destructive forces of nature, the cables are sometimes damaged by sharks. The electric fields that radiate from the cables are probably what attract them and lead them to bite at these vital undersea data lines. In the next 2 years, Taiwan's Zhonghua Telecom will be investing in 3 new cable routes in Asia, one of which will span 10,500 kilometers. This is in addition to the company's existing 27 submarine cables, 12 of which land in Taiwan. These cables will help boost connections within the region and improve internet speeds all around.
Okay, let's continue to talk about undersea cables and how they weave the World Wide Web. We need them. Otherwise, we would not have the World Wide Web. Now, the first paragraph here begins by saying, rarely does the average person have the chance to glimpse the framework of the digital world. This is a less common usage of this phrase here, rarely does something happen. This basically means that the average person rarely has the chance to see the framework of the digital world. Using this pattern here, rarely does, I could say, rarely do I have the chance to go to Kending. I'm just so busy with work here in Taipei, and Kending is so far away, I just don't have the chance to go there as often as I'd like.
Yeah, so rarely does the average person, just like me, I don't work in that field, have the chance to glimpse the framework of the digital world. Yeah, I don't know much about this world. We're in different fields of work and even interests. You know, sometimes our hobbies might go into that direction. I don't know, but I don't know anything about this particular area except when we have problems with the internet and I read stories to find out why. Sometimes it's an earthquake, sometimes It's just accidents that happen with other ships. So anyway, rarely or almost never, the average person, they almost never have the chance to even see the framework of the digital world. So if you glimpse something, it's a way to say you just got a quick look. You didn't have much time to get a real good look, just a quick glance, a quick glimpse. Those are both very similar words, glance and glimpse. And you can use them as both a verb and a noun, and the pronunciation remains the same.
Exactly. So basically, nobody really sees this framework of the digital world. The framework, of course, is the foundation of something. When a building is constructed, they first put up the framework, all the steel beams and stuff like that, and then they add the walls and the windows and stuff like that later. So yeah, nobody really gets to see this. The million kilometers of cables that underpin so much of our daily lives and radiate across the globe only make it to the public's attention when something goes wrong. So yes, they underpin our daily lives. Underpin just means they're underneath there. They are the foundation of our lives, and they radiate across the globe. To radiate means to spread out in all directions, like energy from the sun or light from the sun radiates in all directions. So here, of course, those cables spread out all across the globe. They go down to the Philippines, to Australia, all the way to South America, to North America, Europe, Asia, Africa. They just go everywhere.
Yeah, so radiate, yes, it means that things can spread out in different directions from a single central point. But you can also use radiate to talk about someone's happiness. Oh, she's radiating joy. Or she looks radiant today. Usually we talk about brides who are getting married being radiant. Radiant is the adjective form. But if you radiate happiness, you're kind of sending out those feelings that everybody can pick up on. But here, of course, it just means something is spreading out from a central area and going everywhere. So they radiate across the globe, and people only pay attention to these cables when something goes wrong. That's me. So ship's anchors, those things that are really heavy that keep a ship in place and won't let it move, those are the anchors. They might graze the cables. To graze something just means to touch something lightly while you're passing, and sometimes it can damage that thing it's grazing. We're going to learn scrape in a minute. They're very similar. Graze is a little less destructive than saying something was scraped, I think. So you could fall down and hurt your knee and graze your knee, which just means some of the skin kind of got the skin got roughed off, or you rubbed against something in a way that really took the skin off your knee. You graze your knee. So anyway, sometimes these anchors can graze the cables. That's one reason why we sometimes have internet problems. Or especially in shallower waters near the coast, cables' protective coatings might scrape against rocks and become damaged. Shallow water just means it's not very deep. And shallower is just using superlative here. So shallow, shallower, shallowest. It's a little bit more shallow near the coast, as you know. And so these cable coatings might scrape against rocks. Coatings are a layer of protection on something else.
Exactly. You have coatings on your lenses. For example, your eyeglasses will have coatings on them, which might cost you a little extra money so they don't get scratched so easily. Or the lenses in your camera have coatings. And again, these things may scrape or graze against the rocks. They rub up against them and maybe cause some damage. And whatever the reason, the result is a break in service. And that will make Stephanie very unhappy. When that happens.
I can't shop.
And most of us, of course, will have problems with that. What are we supposed to do with ourselves if the internet goes down? You mean we actually have to talk to each other?
Or read a book?
Read a real book? Or play cards or go for a walk? Who wants to do stuff like that? Okay, so yes, that will mean a break in service. However, huge tech and telecommunications companies find it embarrassing when their services are disrupted or interrupted, so they usually have backup plans. They have plan B if something like that happens.
Yeah, backup plans are what you have in case you have an emergency. Maybe some hospitals have backup generators if they lose electricity. Of course, their patients could die without some of the equipment that they have, so they have backup generators, something that can serve when there's some sort of disruption with their electricity. Here, they have backup plans as well. So it says here, huge tech and telecommunications companies find it embarrassing. I don't know if they're embarrassed, but boy, are people mad when their internet goes down. So they have to have some backup plans. These sometimes include satellites. Satellites that go up into outer space that then circle or orbit the Earth. But more often it says companies just allocate their data to as many different routes around the world as they can afford. Yeah, it's like investment. You don't want to put everything, you don't put all your money into one stock or one type of investment. You want to spread it out so that if something goes wrong, you're not left with nothing. So allocate just means to divide things up into different groups, to allocate. You'll often hear bosses who want to allocate different projects or tasks to different employees. Allocate your money. You want to put your money in different areas so that you can be sure that you're not going to lose all of it if some sort of economic crash comes along. So we have these companies who have thought about this, and this is one of their backup plans. They're actually spreading their data around to as many different routes so that if one cable goes down, not everybody loses access to the internet.
Right, so if you're watching your favorite Korean soap opera and the cable between Korea and Taiwan has a problem or something, they can just reroute it through Japan and the Philippines or something. Don't worry, you can watch as many of those soap operas as you want. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's listen to our Chinese teacher.
大家好，我是派老师。今天讲解的是9月份 Unit 15 Undersea Cables Weave the World Wide Web 第2天的课程。我们继续深入了解网络的骨干——海底电缆。请看第一段第3句 ：Ships' anchors might graze the cables, or especially in shallow waters near the coast, cables' protective coatings might scrape against rocks and become damaged. Whatever the reason, the result is a break in service. 意思是船锚可能会摩擦电缆，电缆的保护涂层可能会与岩石表面接触而受到刮损，特别是在沿岸较浅的水域，不论什么原因，结果都是网路中断。好，我们现在一起看一下学习重点。首先，请看第一段第一句 Rarely does the average person have the chance to glimpse the framework of the digital world. 这是个倒装句。副词 rarely 很少，放在句首，后面倒装。原句应该是 The average person rarely has the chance to glimpse the framework of the digital world. 一般人很少有机会能一瞥数位世界的架构。那老师再给大家一个例句 Rarely does he practice English, but he scored amazingly high on the oral exam.好，不晓得各位同学的班上有没有这样子的奇人，平常呢不太念英文，也不太说英文，不过他们其实有一些实力，只是呢平常不显露出来而已。他很少练习英文，不过考试考得很好。Rarely does he practice English, but he scored amazingly high on the oral exam. 平常很少念英文，但口试的时候呢却相当高分。再来，请看到倒数第2句 However, huge tech and telecommunications companies find it embarrassing when their services are disrupted, so they usually have backup plans. 请同学呢特别注意到这里的 it， 这 it 代替呢就是后面从这里 when their services are disrupted， 这整件事情就是他们的服务呢中断了。会让这些高科技公司觉得很丢脸。好，接下来请看 disrupted， 这里是被动语态。好，但是呢，请看 disrupt 这个动词，它的名词也很重要，是 disruption。 disruption，还有后面的 backup plans 是紧急备案的意思。好，最后一句，请看 These sometimes include satellites， 一直到 can afford 这里。好，请同学注意到后面的这个 allocate， 它是分配的意思，有一个同义词是 distribute， distribute。再来，请看到 routes routes 是表示线路的意思。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to continue talking about undersea cables and how they affect our lives. Remember, they radiate across the globe, and people don't really think about them too much unless something goes wrong. And what things could go wrong? Well, they might get hit by anchors from ships, or in shallow waters, the protective coatings might scrape against the rocks and they'll get damaged that way. But don't worry about that, because these telecommunication companies will be embarrassed if there's a disruption in service, so they just reroute this information. They allocate the data to different routes around the world, and we'll still be able to get our signals, hopefully, but you never know what's going to happen. Somebody might try to sabotage those cables for their own personal means.
Yeah, cut them on purpose so that other people suffer.
Indeed, it could happen in the case of war or something like that.
Yeah.
And, of course, in the next paragraph here it says, the cables aren't fragile, though. Fragile or fragile, American pronunciation is fragile, which means easily broken. Okay, so if you order something, if you order ceramics, for example, from Inge, and you want them shipped to your friend in Australia or something, you better put the word fragile on the box so that they handle the package with care, and then the ceramics won't be broken by the time they arrive in Brisbane.
I don't think they really care if we write fragile on our boxes.
I've heard that too. They actually treat them worse if they see that word.
Yeah, I had some bottles of hot sauce sent to me here in Taiwan, and every bottle was broken except one. And I had fragile all over it and packed them well. So yeah, fragile, something that can be damaged or hurt quite easily. You can also describe someone's feelings as being fragile, or, you know, maybe someone is just suffering a lot, so they are feeling fragile. You should be extra kind to them. So here, the cables aren't fragile, though. They're pretty tough. So the most compact ones, well, only about as thick as a thumb. Now, look at your thumb. That's not very thick, really. I have a small thumb. Tom's thumbs are probably bigger, but still, that's not very big or very thick. They're still coated with protective metal and plastic, as well as conductive copper. If the copper is conductive, it just means electricity can flow through it. They're close to the core of fiber optic cabling. Now let's look at compact first. Compact here just means really small, but also it's arranged in a way that everything fits very neatly into some sort of space. Now, if you go to rent a car on vacation, or even in Taiwan, there are different types of cars you can rent. The compact, and we're using that as a noun. The compact is very inexpensive, you could say. Here I'm pronouncing it as compact, or compact. Some people will say compact, but usually it's for a noun rather than an adjective. Here, this is an adjective. The most compact ones, they're not very thick. Now, what can we tell them about this being close to the core or center of fiber optic cabling? I'm not a specialist on fiber optics, guys.
Well, okay, fiber optic just means there are these fibers, and these I guess they're glass or something like that,
cool.
that allows little bits of light to go through them. And so that's what fiber optic cables are. And that's at the core of this cable. The core, of course, is the middle. The earth, of course, has a core. When you eat an apple, you can also eat the core. You could eat the core of the apple. Not everybody does, but I like to eat the core of the apple. And it is along these fine glass threads, which are the fiber optic cables there. It is along these fine glass threads that information is sent in pulsing patterns of light. So pulsing just means they turn on, they turn off, they turn on, they turn off. That's pulsing. And thicker cables don't necessarily contain more optical fibers. Their width is due to additional layers of protection. So they are putting these cables in the ocean, and they're going to go for thousands of miles. So, of course, they need to be protected. You never know what's down there in the bottom of the ocean. They might get attacked by an anglerfish or something like that.
Hey, I wanted to mention for those of you out there in business, we'll often use core to talk about core competencies or core capabilities, the things that you or your company is really good at. So you're talented at that. What are your core competencies? So you might want to write that down. Spend some time on that. It's used a lot, especially in management consulting. Okay, moving on. We've got some ways, though, that these the layers don't really fully insulate or protect the cable. So in addition to the damage that we've talked about, if you sustain damage, it just means you are damaged, that whatever you're talking about has been damaged, maybe by carelessness or maybe even an earthquake. We saw what earthquakes do to cables here. The cables are sometimes damaged by sharks. Those poor sharks. I told Tom, I hope they're not electrocuted or shocked by anything when they bite. They're just wanting to eat. You know that. They're just hungry. So the electric fields that radiate from the cables are probably what attract them. Yeah, I can see them being attracted to some sort of electric field. And it leads them to bite at these vital undersea data lines.
Exactly. So, of course, there are cables and they've got power going through them, so they create electric fields, just like the Earth has a magnetic field that repels stuff from the sun, keeps it away from us. So we've got these electric fields around these cables. The sharks are attracted to that for some reason, and they probably think it's something to eat, so they try to take a bite.
Ow.
And that can hurt the shark, of course, but I think we're not so much worried about the shark as we are the cable, because all that information will be lost, or at least the signal will be disrupted, and that's what happens if a shark bites those cables. So in the next 2 years, Taiwan's Zhonghua Telecom will be investing in 3 new cable routes in Asia, one of which will span 10,500 kilometers. Now, that's a long cable. Span here as a verb just means it spreads out over that distance. You could say the Golden Gate Bridge spans the body of water between the Pacific Ocean and San Francisco Bay.
You could say we'll cover, that much ground, or even extend. So yeah, that's quite a lot of ground it's going to cover. This is in addition to the company's existing 27 submarine cables, 12 of the 27, 12 of them actually land in Taiwan or end up in Taiwan. So these cables will help boost or, make that signal stronger, help the connections, you could say, within the region, and improve internet speeds all around. Oh, this might be one of the reasons why we're going to be able to get the 5G, right? Because you need faster internet speeds to even offer 5G.
Right. So, of course, Taiwan has 27 cables already, and 12 of them, of course, come to Taiwan. And so, the company has 27 cables, and 12 actually come to Taiwan. So they can reroute signals if there are problems, but of course, they're investing in a new route here, or at least 3 new cable routes in Asia, so that should help us with our communication. And hopefully, some bad apples out there won't have a chance to interrupt our internet service in the future. Okay,
now, I think you need to explain bad apples, Tom.
Bad apple, that just means a bad person, somebody who is causing trouble.
Yeah.
Isn't the phrase, one bad apple doesn't spoil the whole bunch or something like that?
Yeah, that was a song, too.
I think so, yeah. So, yeah, one bad person doesn't mean everybody's bad. So let's be optimistic about that for the future. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
第一段课文提到海底电缆难免会有磨损的风险，虽然如此，在第二段我们了解到这些电缆并不是那么脆弱 ，They are not fragile。请看第二句 ，The most compact ones。好，这个句子结构稍微有点复杂，我们先找出主要子句，请注意，主要子句是 The most compact ones are still coated with protective metal.and plastic. 好，请同学注意到，这里主词是 the most compact ones. Ones 代替的是 cables, 最精巧的电缆。而后面的这里 be coated with 这个片语是表示外面包覆着，或说有什么涂层。两个逗点之间其实是副词子句的省略。While they are only about as thick as a thumb.因为这里的 they 所指称的就是电缆，所以可以省略。第二段也提到了一件有趣的事，原来除了人为因素或大自然现象的破坏力，还有一般也可能造成电脑损坏的因素，就是鲨鱼。请看倒数第二句 ，Still these layers don't fully insulate the cable 这个句子。首先呢，请先看 sustain 这个字，它有遭受、遭遇的意思。比方说 ，The drunk driver died after sustaining severe head injuries. The drunk driver died after sustaining severe head injuries. 酒驾的驾驶头部遭受重伤，后来就死亡了。好，我们回到课文的句子。In addition to the damage sustained 这边，这个 damage 后面呢，其实省略了关系代名词，原本还没有省略是 in addition to the damage which is sustained as a result of human carelessness。好，那省略了关代，所以后面只留下了被动语态。抱歉，这个 sustain 这个过去分词表示被动。好，为什么鲨鱼会攻击缆线呢？可能的理由在最后一句 The electric fields that radiate from the cable 这个句子。这句话的意思是，从电缆放射出来的电场可能会引来鲨鱼，导致它们咬住这些重要的海底数据线。好，以上是我们针对第二天课文内容所做的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
That's it, guys. Thanks for joining us. And if you have more questions or you're curious about undersea cables, get on the internet. There's lots of information there. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.